Hello, everyone. This is Pal Ponder on Weather coming at you with another video. In today's update, we're going to be talking about my March 2020 forecast. I'm excited to bring this to you today. So, before I do get started, if you do like weather related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload about 5 videos a week to keep you updated. All right, so let's get started. So, we're going to start off with my March overall precipitation outlook. And as you can see, there's a shaded area of brown for below average precipitation. Now, if we kind of look back, we've been in what they call an Enzo El Nino pattern. We've had about a 70% chance for it to continue, and that has actually dropped down to about a 60% chance now as the pattern shifts slightly. We had a pretty strong northwest flow for January into February. We gave you a lot of precipitation for the Northwest, and I do think that tends to die down a little bit for March. So I included this area into below average precipitation for the state of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, much of California, Nevada, into Utah, and into Arizona. Now we can go over here to the other brown shaded area where I do think now this zone is going to be more in line with some colder phases, that some Arctic intrusions that come down from the north and mixes in, but it's going to be overall drier air, and Arctic air is the driest air, and that will be an area of a below average precipitation where I just don't think you're going to be mixed in with that southeast elevated, Pacific jet. So this particular area is going to be below average in the state of Minnesota, Wisconsin, into Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. And if we kind of zoom into it's not shaded, but this would be average. So I wouldn't think it's going to be, below average or above average. So pretty much average precipitation for the state of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, into Wyoming, Colorado, Nevada, into Nebraska, Kansas, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, into Missouri, parts of Arkansas, and into Tennessee, North Carolina, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, and pretty much a lot of the Northeast. So Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, all those states. Now, if you turn your attention down south, where this green shaded area, where I do think we've had an elevated SOI, Southern Oscillation Index, and I do think that continues for March with the Pacific Jet remaining active. So this area where you've seen above average precipitation, that will continue into parts of the southeast and for much of Houston, into Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, into Georgia, Mississippi, much of we're in Atlanta, South Carolina, and into the state of Florida. Now let's transition over to my overall temperature outlook for March. And again, we'll start off with the West, where I do think in this darker shaded area in California, you're going to see above average temperatures for that zone. I've been looking at the what they call the MJO, the Managili Oscillation, and that particular, like I said, it does shift but overall, what would mean warmer phases in January and February, like stage, phase 5 and 6, now aren't as warm as that implied. So there are some signs it goes into phase 8, but I don't see any sign going into phase 1, 2, or 3 that would be more or less the holy grail of cold. I do not see that. So I do think we're going to be below average at times in parts of the country, but I don't see any massive Arctic outbreaks or Arctic intrusions lasting for an extended period of time, because most of these anomalies are up than what they were from January and February, and we'll go over that. but there is a lighter shade of brown where you're going to have a slightly above average temperatures for parts of Oregon into Nevada and parts of Arizona. Now, again, we'll turn to this neutral phase where I just don't think you're going to be above or below average for the state of Washington, Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, into New Mexico, Nebraska, parts of Wisconsin. Now, this lighter shade where I zoned out like a slightly below average temperatures. Now, let me kind of zoom into Dallas and what that would actually mean. For example, for example, on March 1st, the high temperature, average temperature over the last 30 years in the Dallas Fort Worth area is 64 degrees. The average low is 43. By the time you get to March 31st, the average high is 73. The average low is 51. So that would put you at an overall average mean of 57.6 degrees. So if you average out the entire month of March, your average high would be 68.2 degrees, then your average low would be 47. So when this shows slightly below average, basically what that means is the average of those 31 days would imply that it would be below those numbers overall for the 31-day outlook. So that'll kind of give you an idea of particularly where you live and what this, slightly below average would actually mean. So this would include much of Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, much of New England, and then into North Carolina, Kentucky. Now, there is a zone where I do think, again, where you have that elevated SOI index where it's going to be raining a lot, which would be cloudy. And I don't think you're going to get those massive warm ups like you did in February for the Southeast as the Southeast Ridge kind of backs off and kind of loses its strength, its control over the domination that it's had for the last 6 weeks into January, into February. I do think that's going to transition into below average now for the state of Louisiana, Alabama, into Arkansas, into Georgia, and South Carolina. Now, I do think there's a zone in Florida where I think overall, between the highs and lows, you're going to be pretty much average. So now let's go into my overall March outlook. So again, we'll zoom into California, where I do think you're just going to be overall drier and mild for this particular zone in California, Nevada, and Oregon. So pretty nice out here for the West Coast. Now, I do think where it's not going to be as prevalent on the Northwest flow, overall average outlook for you guys in Washington and parts of Oregon into Idaho. Now, where I do think where these setups in this particular zone where it says snowy setups, historically in the month of March, this particular zone is already is your snowiest time of the year. So parts of Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, pretty much Colorado into Utah, where I do think it's going to favor a lot of the snowy setups coming for March. And then a little bit further south, where I do think it's going to transition, you're going to have an average zone into New Mexico and to parts of Kansas and some part of the Panhandle. Now, where I do think you're going to get these Arctic intrusions for this particular area, I do think you're going to be dry. So you're going to have big temperature swings where it's going to be, really cold and it's going to, warm back up. So a lot of transition into this zone within the state of Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin, Indiana, Illinois, all these areas in here would be a big temperature swing for March. Now, if we zoom into the Northeast, where I said, pretty much frequent ups and downs, again, you're going to have some snowy times, but you're also going to have, drier times, and it's going to heat up and cool down. So this will be a big swing temperature too, but I just labeled it a little bit different because I do think it's going to be wetter in this area where you're going to have more opportunities for snow chances into Pennsylvania, New York, into much of New England, into Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, all this area in the Northeast. Now, if we zoom in down to the deep south into the southeast, where predominantly that southeast ridge is going to relax, it's going to be cloudy a lot. It's going to be wetter, and I do think that Southern Oscillation Index remains active. So this puts you in a zone where it's the wettest zone out of the whole United States. So this part of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, parts of Missouri, into Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. I do think you're going to be wetter than average, and then below average temperatures in this particular zone for the southeast. Now, when you get into the state of Florida, overall, it is going to be a little wetter at times, but you're kind of used to that in Florida. But also overall pleasant, with a lot of milder days in the state of Florida in this particular zone. So that'll give you a kind of idea how I do think March is going to play out for those 31 days. So I definitely appreciate you guys watching. I was excited to bring this to you today. So do share with your friends on social media that do like weather related content, and definitely check me out at the next video where I'm going to do my overall spring outlook. So look forward to that. Subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you don't miss out on that. And catch me in the next video where I protect you before and after the storm.